station in Asmara, Missouri, Eritrea. With that, there has to be some exchange. For the U.S. to get part of the Red Sea, it had to do something for the king of Ethiopia at the time, Haile Selassie. That was to send some of the Somaliland at the time to the emperor and give what was called the Hound and Reserve area, which is now the Ogaden, which is now Region 5, largely to Ethiopia. Why am I mentioning this? I think simply because, one, for Americans, we need to know who created the current existing geographic expression of the Horn of Africa, and that's the United States. Today, the United States is very active. The Red Sea is again coming back to play in the world politics. What is the role of the US? We have to watch. Having said that, I think I wrote an article not too long ago for that This Standard, which is the main newspaper and magazine for Ethiopia. And I say in that article, the decaying central power of Ethiopia. I'm not considering what's happening now in Ethiopia as a temporary political issue or problem. In a way, it's a decaying of the imperial structure that America left behind in the Second World War. Can that decaying be rescued? That's the whole debate. That's the whole issue. The current symbolic issue that we see today in Ethiopia, the looming large of civil war, the ethnic clashes, the emergence of an autocratic rule in the center, the very fact that the Amhara Christian Tigray coalition that really inherited the Ethiopian empire is no longer comfortable with each other. They parted company. Now the Oromo, as the largest group in Ethiopia, is also asserting its power. All those factors are really playing in the scene, in the theater. So it's not simply a political crisis, it's a restructuring of the Ethiopian state. Whether that restructuring would come out with a more democratic system or really swallow and destroy the Ethiopia that you guys have known for a long time, no one can tell at this point in time. What we can say is that the current autocratic system is not helping. Now that autocratic system that exists in Ethiopia, although, as I asked this morning, the Undersecretary receiving huge aid, both bilateral as well as aid from the United States, it's not really helping the democratization agenda that the United States usually talks about. As a matter of fact, we are inadvertently empowering and accentuating one of the cruelest autocratic rules in the continent. There has already been 1 million people dead in the span of 2 years. Now we talk with all my heart going out to Gaza. We talk about 35,000 people being killed in the Tigray war, or what they call in the Ethiopian Northern War. In 2 years span, the current prime minister presided over the largest human scale death in a short period of time, the largest weaponization of sexual power against women. And again, he's presiding over 2 wars whose ultimate we don't know. What we do know is that Oromia has been completely obliterated. Ethiopia's breadbasket, Ethiopia's home for gold, Ethiopia's economic base is completely destroyed. In addition to that, the Amhara region, which most of you probably have associated with the formulation of the empire that I just talked about, is in an active war that may even be worse than the Tigray crisis. Having said that, the Somali region, which is the most eastern region in Ethiopia, has always been a hot potato for creating conflicts, for also generating conflicts. The only region that's now enjoying peace is the Somali region. But in the coming few months or year, if Prime Minister Abiy accentuates the illegal MOU which he signed in the so-called breakaway state from Somalia, the East will again catch the flame. If the East goes to war, Somali region, where Al-Shabaab can easily get an access to again enter into the geography of Ethiopia, you will have a bipolar kind of war, one in the East, one in the North and South, and most of you can very much speculate where Ethiopia will go. It may go into what 5 American ambassadors predicted about 3 years ago, 2019, at the United States Institute of Peace, that Ethiopia is on the verge, and this is 2019, before the Tigray war started. They concluded Ethiopia is on the verge of an unprecedented African civil war. If that happens, and we are not far from that scenario, you are looking 10 times Rwanda's picture. And why am I mentioning and saying this? Because I want Ethiopian American policymakers and diaspora and those who make public opinion to really take this issue very seriously. If we are ready to help Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, 3 things we need to stop here. 1, to pressure the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia to engage a full-blown transitional justice that accounts and holds accountability and transparency, number 1. Number 2, to release all political prisoners, including journalists like my friend Maaza here. And 3, to stop all the wars, particularly the 2 damning wars in Oromia and Amara. And with that, I will stop. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt the panel. We'll jump right back into it. I would like to share a quick brief of our next guest, who is very kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule to join us. Our next guest has been at the helm of Minneapolis politics since his election in 2017. With the re-election in 2021, Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, serving as the 48th mayor of this vibrant city, Mayor Frey's leadership is distinguished by his unwavering commitment to inclusivity, progressive policymaking, and community engagement. Born and raised in Virginia, Mayor Frey moved to Minneapolis after earning his degrees from College of William and Mary and Villanova University School of Law. His career began as a civil rights attorney and community organizer, where he focused on advocating for fair housing and the rights of low-income individuals. Mayor Frey has also been a central figure in guiding Minneapolis through pivotal movements, particularly following the tragic death of George Floyd in 2020. Beyond his policy achievements and many other achievements, Mayor Frey is known for his accessibility and dedication to engaging directly with the community, such as today at the East African Leadership Summit. Today, we are fortunate to hear from Mayor Frey as he shares his insights on urban leadership, community resilience, and the future of Minneapolis. Please join me in welcoming the Mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Frey.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I'm Jacob Frey, Yalu, Loka Magalada, Minneapolis. Akam Gupta Faya. Whatever language it may be, Mahat Senate, we are so honored to have you here in our city. Whether you are a resident of Minneapolis or you are coming in for this extraordinary East African Leadership Forum, we want to make sure that you feel included, that you feel welcomed, and understand that the city of Minneapolis is the best city in the world, in large part due to our incredible East African community that we have here in the city. So, as was just mentioned, and thank you for the kind introduction, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Northern Virginia. And for those of you that know, there are many large communities of East African community members throughout our country, but 2 of the largest, and specifically Somalia and Oromia and Ethiopia, 2 of the largest are in North Virginia and Minneapolis. And so as I was growing up, I had incredible Somali friends. As I moved out to Minneapolis, I felt right at home because I had that tight-knit community that when I knew very few other people had minimal family or friends, as I had just moved to a new city, I had an amazing East African community that made me feel right at home from the very beginning. And, I think back, and some of the most important lessons that I've ever learned in my life came directly from the East African diaspora in the United States. I remember before I was a politician, before I was a lawyer, before I was working at all in any form, I was a very serious distance runner. I was 10 years old and I cared deeply about running. And so I used to take the bus down to George Mason University on 123 to run with the George Mason track and field team. And anybody have any idea of the incredible Somali runner, multiple runners, but one in particular that used to run for George Mason University? Good. Abdi Bile. Abdi Bile was not only a kind of neighbor of mine, not only was he the then world champion at the 1500 meters, but he became almost a mentor, not in the sense that I actually knew him well, because I didn't. But I remember one instance in particular where I was running by George Mason University at Burke Lake. And I remember seeing this tall, dark, lanky figure coming towards me. And as he approached, I realized, oh my goodness, I think that's Abdi Bile. And I decided that I would never forgive myself if I did not take the opportunity to run with him, at least for a few steps. And he was on his very easy day that day. And so I turned around, I started to run with him, I introduced myself, and, he said to me, he noted that I was running a little bit too fast. I was so excited, I was what's called one-stepping him, which is very rude in the distance running world. You're supposed to run beside someone, not half a step in front of them. And so he put his seemingly large hand on my shoulder, shoulders down here at the time. And he said, Jacob, it is not important how fast you go, it is only important that you go with purpose. And I thought that this was some monumental, epic thing to say. And I thought it was some famous Somali proverb. Now, this is just the way that Abdi Bile talks all the time. That's just who he is. And so now fast forward like 25 years, he certainly didn't remember who I was, but I always remembered him. I get a call from him. And he was approaching me not because of our interaction 25 years prior, but because I was the mayor of Minneapolis. And he saw an opportunity to create youth programs for runners and endurance sports out here in the city. And so I had the opportunity to go for a run with him in the beautiful city that I represent and talk about fostering care and the right mentality for young people, not just in the immediacy, but 5 and 15 and 20 years down the line. So this was this beautiful full circle moment for me. And, we got to talk and we got to have the most extraordinary banter that you've ever heard. Fadi Kudere. And that banter led to a long-term friendship. And so this is just one example of many. But what I know is that our East African community here in Minneapolis is extraordinarily innovative. They're hardworking, they're entrepreneurial. Some of the best ideas that I have had as mayor are not my ideas at all. They have come from our East African community. And what I appreciate is this tenacity, this resilience, this grit that I have seen in our East African community, where they get up every single day and they pursue an endeavor. They run both literally and figuratively with passion. And they don't quit until they ultimately get to the goal in mind. And I have seen this again and again. I have seen our East African community rise in politics, rise in business and medicine. Rise not because they were given a hand up, but rise based on the incredible work ethic that they have. And so when we talk about not just improving relations, but improving our economy, you got to be talking about the East African community. When you talk about exporting the amazing products that we have here in Minnesota, you have to be talking about the East African community. When you talk about the new entrepreneurs, by the way, many of them East African women, we have to be talking about our East African community. And as we talk about our next generation and the generation after and the long-term success for our city, we need to be talking about our East African community yet again. And so this is a community that I am proud to work with. I'm proud to have mentors in this community, not just of me, but of my daughter, Frida, which, as I now understand, this was not on purpose, actually means something like clever girl in Somali. Am I right? Something close to that. And so I want to just express my gratitude to each and every one of you for the work that you do. This East African Leadership Forum is something so special for our city. It's something that I want to make sure that we continue for the long haul. And the Mahat Senate, I'm proud to be here with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Jacob. Okay, I'm back again. We're gonna pick up where we left. So my next speaker is gonna be Maza Garmedin. Just for the audience and for the panelists, I would like the conversation to be spicy, honestly talk about it. Since all four of you guys are from Ethiopia, so we're gonna be focusing about Ethiopia. So Maza, my next person is like, you work as a researcher in international relations and a human rights defender is commendable. You were and still a very active participant when it comes to the issue of Tigray region. As a Tigrayan woman, also living in diaspora, what critical issue or priority do you think is for the Tigrayan community that our country grappling with? And what would the immediate priority be? Also, one more question. How do you see the current situation for the country at large?
Thank you, Husseina. That was a very loaded question. Hi, everyone. I know it has been a long day, but I hope you have a bit of patience to listen to what we have to say. So, what do I think about the current situation in Ethiopia? Unfortunately, many of you might think that the conflict in Tigray, what we believe is a state-sponsored genocide, has ended following the cessation of hostilities agreement that was signed in Pretoria almost a year and a half ago. However, the fact remains that people on the ground continue to suffer. The only different thing now is that the suffering is not only limited to Tigray. It has been exported to other parts of the country, and the country as a whole is in chaos at the moment. Civilians left and right are suffering at the hands of a very dictatorial and genocidal regime that continues to occupy power at the federal state. And this is not only due to the very corrupt and dictatorial nature of the federal government, but also due to the ill-informed and at times uninformed foreign policy of countries like the US and the European Union. Because these very influential powerhouses continue to embolden the federal government as it continues to slaughter people left and right. A very simple example is what happened in Tigray. There are concrete evidences that prove what happened was indeed a state-led genocide that resulted in the killing and the massacre of over 500,000 people and the conflict-related sexual violence of over 350,000 young girls and women. But despite these facts that are independently verified, the State Department and others of the US government continue to push for transitional justice. Transitional justice, in a very simple term, is like reconciliation or forgiving and moving forward. We don't believe, I personally, as an international relations researcher and as a human rights defender, do not believe transitional justice would lead towards stability and peace. What could lead towards sustainable peace in Ethiopia is a real accountability and justice mechanism that the people continue to call for. And this is not really a call only coming from the people in Tigray. I believe this is a call that is echoed across the board by all Ethiopians. And there is very legitimate reason why that's the case, why we don't think transitional justice will lead Ethiopia towards sustainable peace and stability. One, the federal government that controls all judiciary mechanisms in Ethiopia, including the Supreme Court, doesn't have the political will nor the commitment to render justice for the crimes it committed. Two, the Ethiopian judiciary system doesn't have the capacity to adjudicate crimes as grave as weaponized sexual violence and man-made famine and massacre. But the third and the most important thing is the conflict in Tigray was not a local conflict. It was a regional conflict that involved Eritrea, Somalia to a certain degree, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and many other countries. And so there has to be a justice and accountability mechanism that truly reflects the reality and has the intention and the capacity to forge a better path going forward. But what's happening today, as it has been echoed earlier when folks from the State Department was talking, is that the youth government and others haven't seen enough of the evil nature of the federal government. They haven't seen enough of how, little to no regard the federal government has when it comes to human rights. And they want to continue giving them chance to kill and massacre more people and marginalize even more people in the nation. So really, the solution here is for global or international partners, including the US government, to have a well-informed foreign policy towards Ethiopia. Foreign policy that centers the aspirations and the political wishes of the Ethiopian people and not necessarily the few that continues to influence the foreign policy. And the last thing I would say is ensuring that there is victim-centered approach to everything that we do as we continue to aspire and to hope to create a better future for Ethiopians. We have to make sure that our advocacy centers on the voices of the victims and the victims that I work with, the women that I work with who continue to suffer due to, the mainly horrific psychological and physical damage that they incur following the conflict-related sexual violence. On a daily basis, they're calling for international justice and accountability mechanism. They're calling for regime change in Ethiopia. They want those who order soldiers to go and rape them, to go and kill them, to go and force their fathers to rape their own children. They want them to be held accountable. They don't want them to continue committing crimes with impunity, what is exactly happening in Ethiopia. So just to make everything short, the solution is to have real justice and accountability mechanism that doesn't cover up things but hold the actors accountable. And the actors could be from all sides. We don't have a problem. As a Tigran, I don't have a problem having Tigran authorities that might have been implicated in crimes being accountable. But I have a problem when fellow Ethiopians tell me, because you're from Tigray and someone from Tigray has committed a crime against my people, let's just forget it and walk away. No, if we want to see a better future, where people don't get persecuted because of their identity, those who did it today should be held accountable.
Thank you so much. That is why you said so much in 5 minutes. And I really, I will kind of interject and say a few things before I move on. So these are the voices of their community. Yes, what the Ethiopians. And I really want to represent today, sometimes the devil's advocate. You know what I'm saying? Like later on I'll ask about this, we ask the US, do this. What about us? What are we doing? I'll ask that. We really have to talk. Do we talk to each other? Do we do that? So I'll come back to that later on. But I just want to appreciate you, Mazaga, you said a lot. To be on this stage together, to be on this stage with the people like Bakala Garba, I'm obviously honored. So okay, my next question is Professor Bakala Garba. Mr. Garba, as an academician, currently Oromo activist, and former major political party leader, what do you consider the main priority of the Oromo community? What are the critical issues facing the Oromo community that are unique, if there is? And how can we, as a diaspora, effectively speak about the challenges? And in 1 minute, what do you also see as a solution if possible? I know it's a loaded question. I'm timing, that way we have like open conversation rather than long. Keep it to 5 minutes. Thank you. The man's gonna be on the stage.
All right. I would like to thank everybody to remain till the end. I would
I will try to give you a short chronology of how Ethiopia found itself in the situation it is in now, because that will help us understand what the country is looking like. Now, Ethiopia, as it stands as it is today, had its shape only 150 or 160 years ago. Before that, Ethiopia today has about 80 ethnic groups, out of which the 60 or 50 were incorporated into Ethiopia 150 or 160 years ago. But after the incorporation, they were never integrated into the Ethiopian proper because their languages, their culture, their identity, and everything was denied. They were not recognized. They were not given human dignity. They were not using their languages. Their cultures were neglected and all these things. So it went through like this. It went through by being marginalized in the imperial regime and in the Derg regime. But in the 1960s and 1970s, there was a huge national movement from ethnic groups, these 50 or 60 ethnic groups. There were also armed struggles that culminated in overthrowing the Derg regime in 1991. In 1991, and they drew up a kind of agreement, meaning about 70 or 80 of armed struggle, armed groups came together and they signed an agreement, a transitional charter, which later became the constitution of the country in 1995. So in 1995, a new constitution was drawn that gave recognition to the use of the languages and cultivation of the cultures of every ethnic group in the country. So the country was divided, or it was redrawn along ethnic lines, and they had various regions. So in these regions, for example, Somali had its own region, Oromia had, Amara, Afar, Benishangul, and we had about 11 of them. That means all these 11 regions, they use their own languages, they educate their children in their languages, and they cultivate their culture. That was enshrined in the current constitution. But later on, the TPLF and the ruling EPRDF party became more of dictator and was not able to implement fully the spirit and the democratic values that were enshrined in the constitution. So that resulted in an uprising against the regime. And in 2018, struggle from within the party and then from outside the party became instrumental in pushing away the ruling party and bringing Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed into the premiership. What happened in 1918 was when Prime Minister Abiy came into power, there were two conflicting views. These conflicting views are, there are some groups that thought that the old regime or the old ideology will come, in which the country was in great glory, and the country had great history, and the country had peace. Therefore, we are heading back to those old glorious days. Some people were dreaming like that. Many political parties who were outside of the country, who were in exile, thought that that regime will come back again. Therefore, by pushing aside the EPRDF or the TPLF regime, and then by the coming of the Abiy regime into power, that was their aspiration. On the other hand, the other ethnic parties were dreaming another thing. They thought that the federal system will be implemented fully, and then it is the right time now to self-governance in full, and then to use one's property in one's land, and then they were expecting the full implementation of the federal system. So these two there was these two ideologies clashed. And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his colleagues, or the ruling party now, they were in the middle, meaning they know that these two ideas are too incompatible and at the same time irreconcilable ideologies. So, at first glance, the Abiy regime took the TPLF and other ethnic parties like the OLF and the ONLF, the prime targets that will challenge the authority of the Prime Minister and his colleagues. So they were targeted. The first one was TPLF. War was waged against TPLF. There was a huge propaganda campaign both on OLF and TPLF, and then it resulted into a huge war. It resulted in huge war, like my friends said, about 1 million. You cannot believe. Many of you might not have heard this. Within 2 years, about 1 million people died in one single country. A country fought against its own people. 1 million people died, and several hundreds of thousands were evicted their places. So today, the situation in Ethiopia is so grave. Economically, the economy is on its knees. It has defaulted on its foreign debt. There are no direct foreign investments in the country today. Industries are being closed. There is a huge unemployment in the country. There is huge corruption. The cost of living is rising. Therefore, the country is in a very, very bad shape. So, politically, the same is true. But what can one do for this one? I would say only one thing. There are so many suggestions for that, but as to me, what seems feasible is going back to constitutionalism. You know, I heard on this stage from Undersecretary earlier, and I responded to that because she said, or according to her views, it was ethnic federalism didn't work. And I said, ethnic federalism was not practiced. It is about self-rule. It's about human dignity. It's about accommodating diversity. It's about democracy and equality. It has never been implemented. Had it been implemented, these all problems wouldn't have, we wouldn't have faced that. So let's go back to the constitutionality. Conduct free, fair elections, and then the West, including the United States, must help so that we head towards that. Otherwise, the idea that is going on in Ethiopia today about the national dialogue, in which the cadres or the government is talking to itself, and also about the idea of transitional government, does not work at all. It will pull us down. It will bog us down into further ditch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Garba. So let's be mindful of it. I'll just go to the fourth panelist and I'll ask them. And hopefully I'll open up that, take maybe a few questions and then I'll, close up. Okay, finally, Maza Mohammed. Ms. Mohammed, your role as a journalist and Amhara activist is vital for the interests of your community. Given the ongoing volatile and active conflict in Amhara region, especially since Victoria Agreement in late 2020, how do you categorize the situation in Amhara region? And what do you see is the top priority of the Amhara people? In 1 minute, how do you see the situation in the country at large?
Thank you so much. It's hard to say it in 1 minute how to see the country at large. Yeah, anyway, the country at large, before I speak about the country at large, I have to speak what my people or what Amharas are in need right now. As you said, in Amhara region, there is an active war. There is a series of active war. Internets are shut down. There is no transportation. There is no as there's nothing in the region, and it is under state of emergency, though the state of emergency is declared in Amhara region, but the work is all over the country. That means all Amharas all over the country are profiled under state of emergency. All the true voices of Amhara journalists, even the House of People representatives are arrested. So what the Amhara people need right now is they have a question of survival. They're fighting for ensuring their survival. It's an ongoing war, it's an ongoing genocide happening in our region. So the thing that we are looking, the families, the community back home, they're looking for survival. We demand and we ask the world, to stand with the people that were fighting for their survival. But the situation as a whole in the country is, it's getting worse. My fellow friends were saying that from different perspectives, especially as you mentioned, Sena mentioned, especially after the Pretoria Agreement. During the Pretoria Agreement, the Amhara people, the Amhara activists and journalists, we've been asking that the Amhara people were not represented. During that negotiation or agreement, I know everybody except the Amhara people, everybody says you are represented by the federal government, but the people, the community, the Amhara people themselves, they say we're not represented. The federal government is killing, the federal government is massacring, the federal government is displacing Amharas instead of, representing us. But during the agreement between TPLF and Prosperity Party, the negotiators, they say you are represented. The people, we say we're not represented. And it opened another era for another war. It ended up the Tigray war, and then it opened a door for the Amhara war. So Abiy Ahmed opened official war to the people of Amhara. So that's the Pretoria Agreement that we get from the Pretoria Agreement. So we're not looking at another Pretoria Agreement. We're not looking at another peace negotiation, which we are not truly represented. People are talking about national dialogues or negotiations right now for Amharas, whereas the true voices of Amharas are under prison. All the journalists, I'm a journalist, I'm not arrested because I'm here. All my friends, my colleagues, even my media back home is closed already. And I know that if I go back home, they will take me from the airport. That's why I'm running here and there with a tourist visa. I'm not even a citizen or I'm not asking for asylum right now. Because I came here just to visit and I stayed here. As soon as I arrived here, my media were closed there. My friends are arrested. The two representatives from the House of People representative, the Amhara representatives, they are arrested. And we're talking about the national dialogue or peace negotiations, which is a great, serious paradox. So for us, we need to have the true voices. As an Amhara, we need to have the true voices. We need peace. We need justice. Even we ask for independent investigation for the previous issues too, not only for this ongoing war, but also for the previous issues. I have been witnessed for Amhara women. I interviewed, I listened their story, I cried with them, who were raped by TPLF soldiers, who were displaced by Prosperity Party soldiers, and OLS soldiers too. They told me their stories. And also I heard the stories of Tigray women who were raped by different groups. They said the Amharas, the Amhara leaders, the Amhara soldiers, the Eritrean soldiers raped them. I heard all these things. So I demand for the true independent investigation, not accusing here and there. But also I demand, in order to make the situation better in Ethiopia as well as in Amhara. We need to stop the government, the Abiy Ahmed government. We need to stop the war on Amhara, the ongoing war. I'm not talking about the situation which is past. I'm talking about the ongoing war, the ongoing genocide, which is committed by the Ethiopian government. Unless and otherwise, all things will be, a joke for Amharas. Talking about peace negotiations, talking about national dialogue, talking about agreements like Pretoria and others, it is a joke. First, we need to survive. We need the world to stand to stop the ongoing war and genocide. Denying all these things and having Amharas with negotiations and national dialogues is unthinkable. So if you ask me, how do you see the situation? This is how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. Okay, so I want to open up and take a question. What I do want to say is this. As you heard each of us from Faisal to Maaza to Professor Bakala to Maaza Mohammed, each of them represent different communities. You heard what each of them talked about. We come from different backgrounds, from Ethiopia, majority of us. I want you guys to ask some hard questions. If you don't, I will. I'll take maybe 2-3 questions, and you can ask all of them. You can name particularly, their names, Faisal, Garba, to Maazas. Okay, you raise your hand, so I'll take you first.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I really appreciate Minnesota Institute of Foreign Affairs to bring these people together, because if it is me, if I call them, wow, I think my voice is loud, right?
The media is also recording, so, okay. Question, 1 minute and a half.
Yeah, thank you for bringing them together, because if I call them, maybe probably I will succeed because of the lead division. So my question, I do have 2 questions, one for all of them. Ethiopia is deeply divided among communities, and the one cause for the current turmoil is, this division and the rhetoric from all sides against each other. So what is the way forward, and how can we come together and as Ethiopians stand together and bring the communities together to solve our issues and to protect our house? That is one question. The second question goes to Maaza. You said Amhara is, struggling for survival. But how long can each of us, last time it was a Tigray, then there is a war in Oromia, there is Afar issues, Somali issues. Everybody is always thinking about survival. Is that not, leading the countries even into disintegration, or even the survival of the country itself? That in question if this scenario continues. So what is the alternative for the peace, for the negotiation? Is there any other mechanisms? For how long the Amhara will fight with the federal government? Then there is a blame from Tigray against Amhara. There is a blame from Oromo against Amhara, from Amhara against Oromo. So how long we continue this way? And the survival of the country itself is not in question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have a question? I'll take 2 questions, just for the sake of it. I'll take third, and then I'll take a second round. But okay, where's the mic? Could you please pass the mic, young man?
Yes.
Walk around and give it to this guy, please. Thank you. Okay, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. It's my first time to ask a question, but let me say this for the young lady from Amhara region, so which is basically, I have a question, especially Oromos living in Wollo, in the North Shores. They are being massacred, especially last week in a wedding. The whole people in a house, they were burning to ashes, even like about 32 people. So when this kind of things happens, even from, maybe you have, relations from those who are uprising against the government, killing innocent people, is not good. So I would like to say, to give you a message, if you know one of them, tell them, please, innocent people are innocent people. If they want to fight the government, they can. So that's the only thing I have for you, just if you have passed this message.
Okay, thank you so much. The third question is over there. Yes. Okay, and that will be the third, and then I'll come back. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were walked. Okay, I didn't see you, but I'll try to take so. I hope you're writing down, and just keep in mind, let me just say this. These are here in diaspora. They do not represent any political party, so they do not. You ask a general question. They cannot, make any decision like, hey, they stop, fund or stop. They can't realistically. So just generally, but they are very prominent activists. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. We follow the news and we follow what's going on in Ethiopia. Everybody's concerned about what's going on. And what you are telling us is true. It's the truth. But my question would be different. And to be a sequel or a follow-up of what I asked today to this body field. My question is, and I'm asking this as an individualist, because I'm from Somalia. Abiy is trying to annex part of Somalia. So the question is, I'm asking each one of you, not as a politician, because you are not part of the government, but as individuals, how do you see Dr. Abiy's illegal attempt to annex part of Somalia, especially its maritime area or the sea? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me move on, and I want them to answer. There's 3 questions that we had. Okay, I'll come back, and let's answer this, and then for the panelists, I'm gonna time you, and so please keep it to 2 to 3 minutes. Because this is responding, so that way we can turn it into a conversation. Face over the south, please.
I think I'll only touch the last question and the question of people fighting each other. I think the death and the inner fighting that you see in Ethiopia is really more than what the eye meets. I think it's a restructuring of the Ethiopian state per se. People don't just go into war, people don't just kill each other, governments don't kill its people. There is a political crisis and state formation crisis. I always argue that Ethiopia has never achieved what's called state formation. The West wrote a lot propaganda about Ethiopia. What you see today is Ethiopia is struggling to either separate from each other or form a state, and that's the conundrum. And that's what Governor Khaled was mentioning. Can the constitution rescue Ethiopia from its imperial hush-hush, Humpty Dumpty that it was to a cohesive state formation? And the verdict is not yet there. That's one. In terms of Abiy trying to grasp or annex part of Somalia, for those of you who don't know Somali history, it's only 54 years since 1954 when Somaliland was annexed to Ethiopia by the US with the British Emperor Haile Selassie. So people who were not under Ethiopian rule are still alive and young and kicking. That's why the Somali region, not 1% speaks Amharic. How can a person be part of a nation state if they don't even communicate? They can't even listen to the national radio or read the national paper. Can you imagine bringing an entire nation of Central America part and make parts of America and asking them to pay loyalty to the United States? It will never happen. Can Abiy annex part of Somalia? I think it's an expression of what the West is now waking up to learn, that Abiy may not even be sane, because being the host of the Africa Unity, the headquarters of Africa Oneness, and trying to cross and destroy the one principle that unites Africa, the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Africa Unity. It's like America trying to kill itself by annexing Canada. That's what Abiy is doing. So in my opinion, it's only a madman's play to attempt that. Thank you.
Thank you. I will also touch on two questions. The first one, I believe a brother from Ethiopia asked here about people in Ethiopia being divided. I don't buy that concept, unfortunately, because I don't think there is a concept called Ethiopia to begin with. There is no national identity called Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the coming together of different nations and nationalities. The Tigrans, the Amharas, the Oromo, the Agao, the Kamant, and the Somali, and what have you, make Ethiopia what it is today. What's happening today is there is a government that is sitting in the helm of power alongside its original cronies that are trying to impose a one unified identity on people that are innately different. So the Tigrans are being forced to deny who they are and become Amharanized, as it has been evidenced when the forces from the Amhara region were raping the Tigray women. They were telling them that they were doing it in order to Amharanize them, in order to cleanse their bloodline, in order to ensure that the Tigray woman doesn't continue to reproduce. So I don't necessarily think Ethiopia is not a one unified country. Ethiopia is the coming together of people. There has been a multinational federalistic order that helped people coexist peacefully with some shortcomings. But now what's happening is even that constitutional order has been disrupted and they can't live together anymore. So I think it's important that we start our assumptions correctly. So the assumption that there is one unified identity called Ethiopian is absolutely wrong, and it's not true, because I am not an Ethiopian. I am a Tigray who happens to was born and lived in Ethiopia, and by the constitution I became an Ethiopian. The same thing can be said about everyone else. The second issue is, okay, so if people are fighting against each other, then what's the solution? There is a blame coming from the Amhara against the Tigray. There is a blame coming from the Tigrays against the Amhara, blame from the Oromo against Amhara, and vice versa. Okay, if we all agree that the federal government is violating our rights, why was it so difficult during the active conflict, during the genocide in Tigray, for people to come together and call for a transitional government, or hold the Ethiopian government accountable? When myself and His Excellency and others were actively working towards putting an end to the conflict in Tigray and calling for an international credible justice and accountability mechanism, many, including those who are sharing this stage, have been working purposefully in order to deny that chance. So I think it's really, we have to have these hard conversations, and we have to be honest if we are to find a solution. The solution is there has been a power structure in Ethiopia that is now transitioning, that is not being changed, but still there is a unitarist camp that is forcing people to deny their identity, and there is land grabbing. There is this burning desire to claim something that does not belong to you. So the solution is to respect people for who they are and to let them coexist. If that doesn't happen, people should have the right to go about their own way. The Ethiopian Constitution, under Article 39, allows for people to exercise their right self-determination up to cessation. So if anyone doesn't feel safe in Ethiopia, in that agreement, then they should be able to have their own independent country. Because I, as a Tigray, cannot really foresee a future where I refer to myself an Ethiopian, because Ethiopia has killed my father, killed my mom, continued to suffocate my people. So I think that's the reality.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think the main problem in Ethiopia is it emanates from the attempt to destroy.
But you heard the question. They asked 3 questions. I want us to kind of answer their question.
To destroy the federal system. Like they said, both of them said, Ethiopia does not have one identity. We Ethiopians, we have very little things to share except the country, and that state formation, because it didn't integrate all its people, were not considered themselves as one people, in fact. And this attempt has been done in the last 30 or something years by bringing them together to form a state. There was a federal arrangement in which every region uses its own language, cultivates its culture, and we say that was a very good beginning. But now they attempted to destroy that and to take away the hard-won rights of the people and then to squeeze everything and then put it in one melting pot has brought all these problems. Because, like I mentioned earlier, the current prime minister tried to destroy anything that is associated with the identity of various ethnic groups and demand of diversity. Therefore, I think as far as this continues, the country will, the fate of the country will not, we do not know what it leads to in the future. So, as one country, like my friend said, what can we do? And then I'll go back to my original recommendation, whether some people may accept or may not accept. I would say, let's go back to constitutionalism. Let's present our idea, the federal group, and then whatever group there may be. Let's hold our own ideology and then appear in front of the electorate, and then let's get elected through that, and then try to form one government. That is how what I say at the moment. Otherwise, what the government is doing, or through armed struggle or other things, the one we are trying will not take us anywhere, and the country will not head towards unity, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. So two questions. The first one, person was.
Yeah, way forward, I can repeat the question for you, is the way forward, and what alternative, to the current issue, the conflict in Amhara and the Mopes?
Yeah, before the way forward, he asked you, until when Amhara are fighting for survival, because he said, first he mentioned that all people, all others, they say the question is about survival, the war is about survival, and something like this. And I don't know why the person makes a question when it comes to Amhara issue. First, my question is for you. Amhara saying we have the question of survival. They are trying to fight peacefully. They were demonstrating, they were asking in different ways, in peaceful ways. And after a long period of participating in peaceful activities, they are tired of all these things and they stand up for their rights. So this time, there is no any single Amhara who cares about the survival of the whole country. Amharas are well known for it as a unionist, and we're caring about Ethiopia. We're caring about the survival of all people as an Ethiopian. But this time, almost all Amharas, they believe they have first to survive in order to think or in order to share Ethiopia with others. First, they have to survive. So the question is, surviving from the genocide, surviving from the killing, the massacres which is committed by the government. And I don't believe there is a war between people. I don't have a situation, I don't have, a problem with that one. My problem is with the political groups. The war between the federal government and the Tigray, I believe it was a political war. It is not a war between Amharas and Tigrays. That's what I believe. But the situation leads that people to die. As my friend said, we lost millions of people within 2 years war. It was a political war. So we need a political agreement. We need a political solution. But in order to have that, what we have to acknowledge, or we have to recognize what's happening in each of us. We should not say always, it's always us. The situation happening in Tigray, now it's happening in Amhara. The situation happening in Amhara is happening in Oromia and so many other places. Unless it is wise, we will die together. And this time, I can assure you, there's no any Amhara who is concerned more about Ethiopia rather than, there is no, rather than the survival of itself. First, we have to survive. First, as a people, we have to survive. Then we will talk about living with others. And about the situation that my friend mentioned, I don't know where, I know the story. As a journalist, I tried to, I know the story, what you said about the burnings and the weeding like this. I tried to get the stories from both sides. So I think it's better to see what the story from both sides, but I don't know who is making it and who did that one, so I can send this message. But I can assure you, the people of Amhara were fighting for the true survival. They didn't commit any kind of crimes against other people or other nations and nationalities who were living in Amhara regional state. That's what I say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have, I know a lot of you guys are raising hand.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I know, okay, so here's what's gonna be. Abdi, how long do we have? Do we have like 10 more minutes? Because if we have, I don't think we have a lot of time to open up questions.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay, so I'm not gonna take a question, so what, I'm gonna ask you guys the last question, and that will also be your last closing remarks. Each of you guys have spoken about a variety of issues. Whether it is Amhara region or Tigray region or Oromo, everybody is crying and feels like they are exceptionally. So we realize that we hear that, and a lot of time we ask Americans or the West or the EU to do. You have not recommended tangible the way forward. Is there a common ground? Even if there is the solution of Ethiopia, piece of the solution would be possible. What do you recommend? And that will be your last remark. And take 2 minutes, and that's it.
Thank you very much. I think this is not going to be a textbook recommendation, but I think we should be as organic as possible by looking at Ethiopia's current issues and problems. I think if the West is of any help, it should make sure that it fully funds the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. That's number one. When I say fully implement, both in terms of rehabilitation, reintegration of the soldiers, and also investing in repatriating all the refugees. That's number one. Number two, I would recommend that either make the Pretoria Agreement expansive and elastic, expand, in order to include the Amhara and Oromia war, or establish a parallel, equal, or similar system of that Pretoria to bring peace into the Amhara and Oromia conflict. That's number two. Number three, I would recommend to establish not to follow the current Abiy engineered dialogue, which is hacking the process with his own cadre, but establish a South Africa-style transitional justice. Transitional justice doesn't mean you leave and let the criminal elements go free, but it really accounts for what happened and who did what, but not become punitive to the extent possible. So instead of the lukewarm transitional system that the US government is now recommending, I will go for a South Africa style reconciliation and rehabilitation and transitional justice, which is expansive. And fourthly, I will have the West to use all its powers, economic, political, what have you, to tame, not get rid of, because you cannot get rid of an existing government, but tame the government of Ethiopia that exists currently in a situation that it becomes promoter of regional stability, as opposed of what Prime Minister Abiy became now, which is the number one instigator of instability in the region by having conflict with Djibouti, by having conflict with Somalia through the MOU, and even by not having comfortable relationship with Kenya, which is now inherited what Ethiopia used to have, which is the anchor starter in the eyes of the West. So I think taming Prime Minister Abiy and bringing him along is also a huge assignment that both Ethiopians as well as the West will have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My recommendations, I do agree with my fellow panelists and with regards to the full implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, which among many things dictates the full withdrawal of all foreign forces from Tigray, which includes the Amhara forces and the Eritreans that continue to occupy over 40% of lands that are historically and constitutionally of the Tigray region. And in addition to that, there needs to be full rehabilitation and repatriation of IDPs, who are about 2.5 million of them, living in extremely horrific circumstances across the region. And of course, there are over 70,000 refugees that continue to find themselves in another round of conflict in Sudan. So there needs to be full implementation of Pretoria. But the most important thing for Ethiopians, for anyone who cares about Ethiopia, is to have honest and real conversation. Today, we heard about different communities being marginalized and being at the receiving end of state violence. But it's really important to remember who these actors are and what role they play during the conflict that initially began in Tigray. The Amhara forces, particularly Fano, have been working hand in hand with the federal government during the conflict in Tigray. The breakup between the Amhara forces and the Ethiopian federal government came when the Pretoria Agreement was signed that effectively silenced the guns in Tigray. So the political contention still remains, and actors are changing, goals, as it is the case in politics all the time. So the Pretoria Agreement is not a peace treaty; it's a cessation of hostilities agreement, and there was supposed to be peace talks and political conversation after the Pretoria Agreement. But what we're seeing today is the international actors, including the US, treating the cessation of hostilities agreement as a peace treaty. It is not a peace treaty. It does not address and answer the main reasons why conflicts continue to erupt across the country. So we have to push towards having that real and legitimate conversation, but with the understanding that even us have played a role in the suffering and the massacre of innocent people, farmers everywhere in the country. That being said, as individuals on this stage, we have to understand the power we have and the role and the influence we have in our community. Some of us have been working, advocating on behalf of the victims of conflict-related sexual violence, manmade famine, starvation, and what have you, while many others have been actively dehumanizing people, actively denying the crimes that are effectively documented. So I think it's all good to act holy and all, but we have to hold ourselves accountable if we are to have the moral ground to hold politicians and others accountable. And just last point, I know we talked a lot about the US. But the main reason why we talk a lot about the US is because US is a superpower and they have a role to play, and they have economic, political, and diplomatic tools that they can use to ensure dictatorial government do not continue to marginalize people as it is in Ethiopia.
I buy completely what they said about the Pretoria implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, but for me that is a little bit narrower because the Pretoria Agreement is concerned with the war between Tigray and the federal government, the central government. But if we are talking about the entire Ethiopia as its entirety, we need to expand a little bit and talk about even the Pretoria Agreement calls for the restoration of the constitutional order, the maintenance of the status quo ante. So I think so. Let's get rid of the idea or the false impression that the Prime Minister sent to the Amaras, for example, by saying that it would take them to the old glory and then to that imperial system. Let's get rid of that tie and then come back to our senses and come to the constitutional order in which the rights of all people is respected and diversity is accommodated. Then having our ideologies running for election and having a government elected and legal and legitimate government in the future. Otherwise, I don't see any other future other than this. Thank you.
Thank you.
you. My recommendations, I believe in, in conversations, national dialogues and different things, but it should be honest and with true representation. It should be honest and with true representation. Without having the true representations, without having the true voice of the victims, it seems like, having another or opening another situations for different, again, different wars and conflicts. So in order to stop the situations and to make the situations better in Ethiopia, we need to have a discussion with a true representation and with honest representation. And the other thing, as an Amar, and as an activist and advocate for Amhara people, I'm really tired of hearing that the situations happening during the war in Tigray, that the Amharas committed this and that, the Fanos committed this and that. Then now when we are asking about the current situations, the current pain, the current genocide and the current massacre, asking about or reading about that situation doesn't make the current one point. I am asking an independent investigation for all what happened previously and right now. It is good and it's perfect to ask for independent investigation, accountability, and justice. But it is not right and it's not correct, it's not fair to say you do this previously and then this will is correct. That doesn't work. It may be working for the same in the social media or in the situations. But you cannot fault or you cannot answer this issue for people who have the full control right now on their rights. For the people, for the Fanos or for the Amhara users who are saying we will die for our survival. You cannot fool them with these answers, or you cannot stop them with answers. You can stop all the situations. You can make better the situations with truly addressing the situation. Unless there will not be any kind of situation that you can make it on the social media. Shouting on social media, blaming, shaming, or trying to underestimate people, it works on social media. But on the ground, people are dying for their survival. So you cannot stop it in this way. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, before I'll let them off the stage, I'll say this. I'll ask each of you, as well as the panelists, just for a moment, whatever ethnic group you are, step out of that and pretend like you are, if you're an Oromo, pretend like you're an Amhara. Or if you are Somali, pretend like you are Far. Or whatever ethnic it is. What would I do? How would I feel if what's going on now, or what's happened 2 years ago, what happened 2 decades ago happened to me? I want to ask, it's about time. Ethiopia, the home, is in a crisis that requires no one can save us other than us. For us to save ourselves, so that we have to see the humanity of the other person. These panelists who came here are very vocal and respecting their community. Some of them took high risk to be here to sit next to the fellow person they sat next to. I want to appreciate them on behalf of the Institute, and I want to appreciate them on behalf of the UWH, and on behalf of you guys. Thank you so much for being here.